Hey guys, it's Mitch. How's it going? We're going back to what I consider Frank Miller's best work in terms of the art. Maybe not the writing. I mean, for Frank Miller, it's kind of hard to top, Dark Knight Returns and Year One. But in terms of what his actual style evolved into, I still think this is the peak. This is Sin City, A Dame to Kill For, and we're looking at issue 3 today. So just before we get into it, if you enjoy the channel, if you feel like you might want to help out a little bit, go subscribe to my Patreon. Links are in the description. It gives you early access to everything I do. Helps out the channel, helps to buy new comics. So we all know the deal of how Sin City got started. If you're unfamiliar, feel free to go back and check out my video on issue 1 of this series. So what's been going on in this particular series is our main character, Dwight, has a shitty life. He's a investigative photographer, I suppose, but not like for a newspaper, more like a PI photographer, which means he has to take a lot of photos of just people creeping around behind their spouses' backs. He seems like the kind of guy who's previously gotten into a lot of trouble because he had difficulty controlling his impulses. So he's, over the last few years, I suppose, he's devoted himself to kind of locking down that uncontrollable part of his personality. So that means, no liquor, no cigarettes, no women, probably. And it's not a particularly fun life Dwight has, but it's safe, I guess. He can make it day to day, which is, at this point, at least all he really wants to do. And then one of his old flames walks back into his life. This is Ava. Ava has kind of worked her way up in the world to where she's attached herself to one of the richer men in Basin City, which is Damian Lord. And she comes waltzing back into Dwight's life, basically just works the situation until he's tied around her little finger again, because that was always how it was. Gets him all worked up with tales about how Damian's been getting his manservant Minute to torture Ava, and will eventually get him to kill her, and basically making it so it's a knight in shining armor having to save the imperiled princess. And at the end of the last issue, Ava was over at Dwight's place. They had themselves a night, and then Minute came up to fetch her. Dwight, of course, tries to defend her honor, and he gets beat around pretty badly and tossed out a window. So that's where we're going to start this one. We can start with the cover. That's another good one. It's interesting looking at the progression of the covers because the first one has the strongest composition, I'd say, by far. And it's one of the more iconic covers that Frank Miller's done. And thinking about it, I think he needed to do that because at this point, Sin City, it's a somewhat established property, although it's always been featured in Dark Horse Presents before this. This is the first series it's had on its own. So there's a lot of people who will recognize the title at least, or if they don't, they'll be able to, just check out the cool cover image and go, maybe I should look at that. The second issue is pretty good, but it's not as strong. And I mean, if you're looking for progression, we've got first our hero, then we've got our hero in peril. Now we've got our hero with backup in the form of Marv, the star of the first Sin City series. And everybody wants to read about Marv. And it's a great shot of him. I love how he uses like the brush to just illustrate that Marv has bad skin. All the particular strokes he chooses just makes him look very wrinkly and craggy. You even get, the wrinkles on the back of on the side of the neck, all of that. That's good stuff. And of course, Dwight's had his face pounded over the last few issues, so he's just looking like a hunk of meat. Not doing a lot with the no holding lines, but you don't have to as much with an all black background. So a little bit here with Dwight, his shoulders bleeding into Marv, same up here. Marv is a little bit more outlined though. And then the hand is mostly outlined. There's a little bit of blending the fingers together, so I don't mind that at all. All right, so we're going to start out carrying over directly from the last issue where Dwight is mid-flight out of the window. It's a striking image, and one that's kind of similar to the kind of thing Frank Miller likes to do a lot, I think, to open up a book, which is get, a lot of black on the page and then a small image. Or sometimes no image, sometimes it's just caption boxes. So Dwight comes to, he's already hit the asphalt. Got shards of glass sticking out of him all over. That's nice and gross. And a car comes bearing down on him, and he's barely able to get out of the way in time and kind of, clutches at it as it passes. The high contrast style works great for headlights, particularly, like that deer in headlights thing. And we're getting a lot of Dutch angles here as the car bears down on Dwight. Interesting thing he does where the car is moving towards him left to right here, and then when it passes him, it kind of jerks him, and you kind of feel the jerk because of the change in direction. And of course, Frank Miller has all sorts of model cars, particularly of the 40s and I think 50s, actually. So Dwight bounces off the side of the car. As he's going, he spots Ava in the back seat, smacking on the windows, just be like, no, I am so terrified for my life. And he goes flying away, bounces off another car, almost gets hit by a cop cruiser, and kind of kneels in the street just naked and howling. I mean, he's had an emotional night. He got his girl back, then he had her taken away, and he got the living shit kicked out of him. And also doing the storytelling thing, having the car continue in the same direction, only it's moving away from us here more than it was here. And when Dwight bounces back, he bounces off the car going back in the original direction, gets really close to getting hit by that cop car. That cop car's going out, so you get this like chaotic traffic feeling. That's some good stuff. Weird choice with the lines in the background here. It almost feels like it's meant to be speed lines, but not quite. It's all done freehand by the looks of it. He was doing it on the previous page too. I guess he just thought the white looked a little bit too bare maybe. And yeah, the close-up on Dwight here and his face looks like ground hamburger. Again, interesting choices. Not doing caption boxes in this case, doing flashes like strobes or something. And with the kind of impacts he's been taking, that might be the kind of form that his thoughts are taking, where they're just like impulses. And again, some of that great Frank Miller lettering. I love Frank Miller's lettering. I think it fits absolutely perfectly with Sin City. So after he's collected himself, he's attended to his wounds a little bit. He decides on a course of action. He's going to head down to the local watering hole, which is where he met Ava originally, and he's going to basically soak himself back in this world, because that's what it's going to take to get Ava back. When he gets there, Nancy's taking the stage. Nancy's a character that stuck around quite a while in Sin City. She was there in the original series, at least a little bit. And Nancy is, of course, a stripper, and would get more of a starring role in That Yellow Bastard. But for now, she's just like one of the hottest girls in a town that is full of hot girls. And again, interesting choices with Nancy, where he's deciding to let, you want to talk about high contrast. He's going to draw out, her hat, her hair, what she's wearing, the thong and the gloves and the boots. And then Nancy herself is just like backlighting, so you don't get a clear picture of her. And I think it's a smart way to go. And we even get something close to like no holding lines with the outlines, where we're not getting complete outlines here, which works for, a dark and smoky bar, but it also gives her this kind of, I don't want to say like ethereal quality, but like she seems a bit more than just like a regular person because of it. So Dwight wanders in. He comes across Shelley, who apparently him and her had a bit of a thing for a while, but he hasn't been in touch for a few months. And I mean, he wouldn't normally even come here. I mean, that might be part of it. But he's on a mission. He has to go rescue Ava. Only, he can't do it alone. Last time he even tried that, he got beat to paste. So he's come here for some reinforcements. So he apologizes to Shelley several times, which is important because Shelley's going to come back in the story eventually. And from off in the distance, we hear the unmistakable sounds of an asshole at the bar who's arguing with Josie, the bartender, about being cut off. And he says, "What am I getting cut off for? And I don't see you cutting off King Kong over there." And Josie's like, "Yeah, no, he doesn't ever get cut off." I do like taking a closer look at like this panel here. And it's interesting how little Frank Miller actually shows you. He shows you the bar and the tops of the chairs and then just basically everybody's shoulders. But you still get a very clear impression of where everything is. So Dwight wanders over because he's here looking specifically for Marv. And Marv is trying to talk the guy down, which is a very un-Marv kind of thing, at least from what we know of the previous series. But, it stands to reason that sometimes if Marv is in a good mood, if he's been sitting watching Nancy all night, which he does often, then maybe, it's like, I don't need to break up my night. It's fine. But, of course, the dude, he's in a Frank Miller story, so he's going to be very one note. And he's going to keep on insulting Marv. Meanwhile, all of his buddies are kind of, gathering around him. And they're just like the worst people. Like there's the one guy with a swastika armband in 1993. I think just so Frank can say, yeah, no, these are the worst people you've ever seen. And you don't have to feel bad when they get busted up. One of them even has a Hellboy t-shirt. Like what kind of reprehensible person would do that? And, Dwight's listening in and he's thinking like, man, Marv is feeling way too easygoing. I'm going to have to do something about that. And the asshole at the bar keeps pushing Marv, keeps pushing him, keeps insulting the bartender, Josie. And that's going a little too far, even for Marv in a good mood. So he keeps trying to end it peacefully, but naturally the guy won't do that. Why? Because he's got a giant revolver tucked into his pants there. He's going to keep pushing the envelope, keeps threatening Marv with the gun, gets it right up to his forehead here, which doesn't disturb Marv particularly, but that's about as far as he's going to let it go. And he keeps insulting the bartender while he's doing it. So naturally, he gets his arm broken, and I mean, like all of it. and his face smashed into the bar, and that's kind of the end of his night. And I mean, that's all we really wanted to see at this point. And yeah, next thing we see, the asshole has been laid out on the floor beside the bar, and he's just kind of a mess of bloodstains. And his friends all decide they've got somewhere better to be. And that's when Dwight gets his attention. Marv's like, hey, buddy, I didn't even see you there. And, Marv calling him buddy is stretching the truth a little bit. I mean, not as far as he knows, but, Dwight doesn't consider Marv a friend. He's just trying to stay on his good side all the time. And tonight he has use of him. So they're going to sit and hang out for a little while. And basically they're just going to watch Nancy and drink. And they're going to keep drinking until the bottle's empty. And then once Dwight figures that he's had enough to be a little bit suggestible, he starts telling him about Ava and Damian Lord and Manute. And turns out he judged right because Marv is all in. And Dwight feels bad about this because he's using Marv, but at the same time he's justifying it to himself. It's what else is he going to do? He's going to break somebody's face. It might as well be the face I want him to break. And yeah, he could potentially get killed, but he's going to get himself killed eventually anyway. Why not get himself killed helping me? And, he still feels like a piece of shit at the end of it. But at least he's got his backup. Great stuff. Always remembering to keep the smoke in the background here. And, Nancy looks great on this splash where she's almost completely silhouetted. It's just the one outline going all the way up. And then the hair, the boots, the gloves, all that stuff. So they get going to Damian Lord's place. On the way, Marv picks up his gun, Lucille, who we would have seen in the Sin City story that was in Dark Horse Presents. And Dwight is creeped out by just how much fun Marv is having with this gun. Tells him, okay, Marv, but the gun stays in the car when we go in. He's like, you're no fun. So they split up at the gate. Dwight makes himself scarce while Marv does the opposite. Gets right into the middle of it with 3 or 4 different dudes. It's a little hard to tell in this one. This one is a little bit sloppy. Sometimes he does a really good job of, Dwight here is perfectly set against the background and against all the light gangsters here, security guards, whatever they are. You can't really miss them. And then you get to a shot like this where we're looking at it from a downward view. It might have worked a little better if it had been from an upward view against the black sky. I don't know. I'm not exactly going to question Frank, though. So Marv is dealing with all these guards. You get the impression he dispatched all of them. And then he notices Manute and naturally goes running straight for him and barrels into him, crashing him through the window and starts beating him senseless. Which is exactly what he's there for. I do love this stuff. Sometimes it's a little awkward when Frank draws a guy, leaping at somebody. Sometimes it's amazing. This one I would classify as amazing. I love this shot. It is weirdly edgy, early 90s edgy for Frank Miller with the teeth showing and the eyes. But he would do that sometimes. And, he wants to portray Marv as this just directed lunatic, Just got unleashed, pointed in a direction and went, okay, go. And this is what you get. You get glass shattering everywhere. You get bodies flying. And Marv ends up beating someone's face in. All right, so from there, Dwight's creeping through Damian Lord's house because he's there to rescue Ava. And it's an interesting juxtaposition, this panel here between this page here, where this is all, sound and fury, and this is, all black, and it feels completely silent. Didn't quite get the pattern here 100% symmetrical either, which I find reassuring, because I do that shit all the time, and it bugs the hell out of me. So eventually he finds Damian Lord in, I guess, his study, something like that. There's a whole bunch of books, and Damian Lord's sitting there in his house coat with a drink. Seems studyish. And Dwight naturally goes, where's Ava, and what have you done with her? And Damian Lord says, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. Turns away from him to, access his desk. Dwight is like, don't do that, man. Don't give me an excuse. And turns around quickly and pulls out a pistol, which he catches Dwight in the arm with. And Dwight immediately disarms him. Damian Lord is not any kind of combatant. So big kicks, big punches, crack, crack, crack. And anytime you get this kind of stuff, it harkens back a little bit to Daredevil and Bullseye, right? Where it's more about the movement than it is about perfect figure work or perfect poses. It's interesting how the movement of the characters is described almost completely by the folds in their clothing. If you fuzz out your eyes a little bit, you just see it as these streaks of black all over the place. And sometimes it feels kind of random. Sometimes it feels, very directed. And it makes me wonder just how careful Frank is with a brush at this point. The folds of the coat here, he decided that the tension point was in the armpit. Everything else is coming out from there. The stuff in the pants, it seems like he has a good idea on this one here. where the folds are all coming out from the crotch, but you get to the calf and it's like a lot more random. Same with the stuff on Damian Lord's, I guess, pajama pants. So we get one final crack. Damian Lord slumps to the floor, and his neck is broken. He's completely dead. And Dwight is freaking out because that was not his intention at all. I mean, maybe beat the shit out of Damian Lord because Dwight got the shit beat out of him. Fair is fair. And then take Ava back. But, he wasn't thinking that. I don't even think he was thinking that far ahead. It's just go there and things will work out. And I mean, backing up the previous point where you can see the eyes and the teeth, even though it wouldn't make any sense from a lighting perspective. Also gets in the wrinkles. Doesn't make a ton of sense. That's okay. Looks cool. And he's just like, shit, I killed him. And behind him comes Ava. And she's like, you sure did. And this is where we're going to see Ava for real. Where she's like, I knew I could count on you. Sex always made you stupid, ready to believe anything. And that temper of yours never could control it. You've murdered an innocent man, darling, and you've made me a very rich woman. And Dwight just kind of freezes while she yells, thanks, sucker, in like a very 50s font. So yeah, sucker is the word. Dwight got himself all riled up. He got himself wound around Ava's little finger again. And all she had to do was tell him some outlandish story about getting tortured by her husband. And Dwight was right there, ready to just rescue her, no questions asked. Never stopped to think whether this was even remotely likely. And now he's gone and killed somebody that he never meant to. And it didn't get him Ava, it actually just got him shot. Because Ava doesn't give a shit about him, Ava doesn't give a shit about anybody. She's just looking at how she can use people. But that's where we're going to end the issue. That's a nice cliffhanger to end that one on. Oh, and Legend Comics, or Legend, what is it called? Legend Studios, or just Legend? But they're coming to the New York Comic Book Spectacular in '94. All sorts of Legend and Dark Horse creators like Art Adams, John Byrne, Paul Chadwick, Jeff Darrow, Dave Gibbons, Mike Mignola, and Frank Miller. Can you imagine that lineup? Like, you'd just be sitting in lines all day, and it would be like, I'm sure for a lot of people that would be worth it. Oh, and we're getting Hellboy introduced. Also, Monkey Man and O'Brien. Equally famous now. I mean, I want to say it might have been if Art Adams had produced more than 3 issues. But I mean, it's Monkey Man and O'Brien. Where was that going to go? I don't know. It could have gone somewhere awesome, although I think he was writing it too, and who knows. I don't even know how well Art Adams can write. I can't imagine it's fantastic, or we probably would have gotten some more from it. And Sin City won the National Cartoonist Award for Best Comic of 1992. Damn right. And there's our cover without the lettering. So yeah, that is Dame to Kill 4, issue 3. So we are ratcheting up the intensity from issue to issue here. That's going to have to slow down again before we can ramp back up to the climax. You can't just slam your foot down on the accelerator and keep going until the end of the series. But this is, of course, a great way to get somebody involved in a storyline, is just build and build and build until, like the midpoint, 2/3, and then you drop down for a breather and come back at it. So, next issue. I mean, Dwight got shot in this one. Is he going to die? Probably, right? He's probably going to die in the next issue, and then the next 2 after that are just going to be his funeral and Marv being sad. I guess we'll have to read it to find out. But for this one anyway, that's going to do it. Thanks very much for watching. If you like this video, please hit like, hit subscribe, hit the notifications so you know when the next one's coming out. Go over and subscribe to my Patreon. It gives you early access to everything I do, from the Blood Force stuff to the YouTube videos before they get uploaded to YouTube, as well as some Patreon exclusive content. You can also follow me on Instagram and DM me there for commissions, and you can join the Blood Force Discord server. But yeah, that's going to do it. Thanks again for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.